Yeah. I'm not excited.
Hey everybody in WebEx. If you hear this, could you type yes in chat, please? Type yes in the chat if you hear this. And if we do a quick microphone test on your side.
Brian, this is Sharon.
Hi, this is Judy. I'm on the phone.
Okay, cool. Sharon, could you say test 1, 2, 3 like 3 times, please?
Test 1, 2, 3. Test 1, 2, 3. Test 1, 2, 3.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Hey, Brian, this is Tony. Can you hear me? Hey, Brian, can you hear me? I see Sharon can. Just want to make sure.
All right, and Tony, could you say test one more time, please?
Yeah, test.
All muted, so I won't be able to hear you from here until I think you should be able to hear council still.
We'll get a couple seconds. Hey, Sarah. Hey, Sarah.
Call to order the work session for the City of Sierra Vista City Council for 9 February 2021. And I'll just mention that all members are present. We'll start with item 2A, which is the February 11th council meeting agenda items. And we start with, of course, roll call, or call to order, roll call, pledge, and acceptance of the agenda. Is there any item on the agenda that we need to talk about right now? Change, amend? Hearing nothing, we'll go on to the awards and presentations, which I'll mention We have at least 5, and Maria, let me know if we have any more. Members of the commissions that will be just reading their, we won't be doing the presentation, but we're reading their names and thanking them during that part, and that's all part of the COVID protocols. So we'll present those to the outgoing commissioners. City manager's report, Mr. Petichik, is there anything you want to share with us today?
Well, I'll be attending a JPA board meeting for CCOM that morning, so hopefully I'll have an update for you there. And by my count here, I have about 7 projects on here to go over. So it'll take a little bit, like the EMS substation, police department locker room upgrades. So a few of those on there. So.
Yeah, I'm kind of interested. I don't know why, Chief, but I've been interested in the locker room for your female officers. Because I guess my curiosity was piqued, not for prurient reasons, but because we haven't had one before, and I know we've had female officers for quite a period of time.
We do have a female locker room, it just was full and
Okay.
needed to be expanded to put more lockers in.
Okay,
So,
all right, but I'd like to see what their facilities, make sure that they're getting the same considerations as the guys.
absolutely.
Okay. City manager's report, consent agenda, 2 items on the consent agenda. One is the first is the regular city council meeting minutes for January 14th. Any additions, completion, or any additions, corrections, discussion about the minutes? Hopefully everybody's had a chance to go through the minutes. Yeah. Okay. Resolution appointment of Mr. Fisher to the Metropolitan Planning Planning and Zoning Commission. I skipped a line there. Any comments about Mr. Fisher?
No comments other
Corrections?
than, I just had to recommend another person because we had someone pass away.
So this is Mr. Fisher's replacing that person, or?
Yes.
Okay. And that's the reason of, okay,
And that's the reason there's a second seat available.
okay.
Rather
Which
than just the first
wasn't
one.
there 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks
Correct.
ago, the last time we met.
Correct, we
Okay.
were unaware that
Well,
he had passed.
it's a shame that we lost a good member of the Planning and Zoning
Mm-hmm.
Commission.
That's why I was saying we did this before.
So,
Okay.
But when
right.
we did it before, there wasn't 2 seats available.
There was only the one, and then we later found out through Jeff's research that Mr. Thompson had passed, and so that made another seat available. So that's why I had to do another recommendation. So this is in addition to the appointment of Mr. Malone.
Okay. Well, and I just would mention in the motion or that William Goeth is not, his name's not listed.
Okay, so Jill, you wanna?
Mr. Goeth's address is located outside the city limits. His application did in fact say that he was a resident of the city, but the residence address that he provided us is outside the city limits. So he is not eligible to sit on the P and Z.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Next item is the 2.3, which is a resolution appointment of members to the Sierra Vista Metropolitan Planning Organization Board of Directors. Seeing no comments, we'll move on. Public hearing, item number 3. Liquor license, Mrs. Adams.
Mayor Mueller, members of council, this is for some, a long-awaited application for a restaurant liquor license for 143 Street Tacos at 80 Carmichael. The notice of the public hearing was posted on the facility, and we have not received any comments, pro or con. The background of Ms. Carrillo, who is listed as the owner, was done by the police department, and they have no objection with this application going forward. And if approved Thursday night, it will be returned to the state for final action.
Questions or discussion on this item? Seeing none, thank you, Ms. Adams. We'll move on. Item number 4, let's see, text amendment for, try to get the right here.
Very happy
Oh, this is-
patrons that will be
yeah, this is
excited
the-
about that.
Proposed text amendment for Sierra Vista Development Code, Matrix and use permissions, the zoning code development, MHR district, to permit up to 30% of lots be transformed to become subdivided for recreational vehicles. Mr. McLaughlin.
And I'll explain what that means. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of council. This amendment application was made by a property owner who resides in the Cloud9 Ranch Estate subdivision, which is situated south of Highway 90, east of Avenida del Sol. The request involves a one-sentence text change to the Manufactured Home Residence District, or MHR for short. That would allow 30% of the lots within a manufactured home subdivision to have recreational vehicles for dwelling purposes. The MHR district boundaries cover both manufactured home subdivisions and manufactured home parks. A manufactured home subdivision is a residential subdivision designed for the express purpose of offering lots under individual ownership for the placement of single-family dwelling units, either a manufactured home or a site-built home on lots that are 4,500 square feet or greater, much like a traditional neighborhood. A manufactured home park, on the other hand, is real property under single ownership that's used as a location for two or more manufactured homes that are, or intended to be, occupied as dwellings on lots which are not conveyable. Tenants lease the ground space and reside in a unit that they either own or is provided by the property owner for rent. Like an apartment complex, there are often commonly shared amenities and maintenance. Landscaping and perimeter buffering is required as a condition for site plan approval. Manufactured home parks are large, relatively insulated, self-contained properties. The request before you applies only to manufactured home subdivisions. 3 neighborhoods are affected by this proposal: Cloud9 Ranch Estates, which I already mentioned, Solgar, and the incorporated portions of Fry Town Site. They are shaded blue on Exhibit A in the staff report. And according to our GIS parcel data, there are 352 parcels of land within the amendment area. If approved, 106 of these existing platted lots would be eligible for use by recreational vehicles. Now,
Can I ask you a question on the numbers? When you said there are a total, how many?
352.
And that's citywide, or is that just in the Cloud9 area?
That is all the platted lots shaded in blue. So that includes
so it's
Cloud9,
citywide.
Solgar,
Okay,
and
got
the
it.
incorporated portions of
Okay.
Fry Town Site.
Got it.
Now, the code requires attention on how the application benefits the general welfare of the community. With respect to public safety, site-built homes, as you know, are inspected and approved for compliance with the city's adopted building codes. Manufactured homes are inspected and certified by HUD, while the city oversees the installation requirements pursuant to our intergovernmental agreement with the state. RVs are exempt from HUD's manufactured home construction and safety standards as they are intended for recreational use. That's not to say that there's not a segment of society who prefer to live in their RVs year-round. Traditionally, local zoning laws confine their use to campgrounds and park settings, which is the case here and in every other local jurisdiction that we researched across the state. The code asks us to consider whether the request furthers the purposes of the development code. Now, the MHR district regulations are designed to stabilize and protect the residential character of the neighborhood, promote and encourage the family environment, and prohibit all incompatible activities. The request is not compatible with this purpose and intent. Allowing RVs as a primary use in existing developed neighborhoods can fundamentally alter the character and quality of these areas that the city has spent many years and vast sums of public dollars trying to revitalize. It's not what people have bought into. It's also important to consider that the city's definition encompasses RVs of all shapes, sizes, ages, and complexions, from pop-up trailers and truck campers to Class A motor coaches. This proposal would allow any type of recreational vehicle to be used as a living unit, either by an owner or renter on a full-time basis. Again, no city inspection would be required because a recreational vehicle is not regarded as a building. Another factor to consider, by law, recreation vehicles are 400 square feet or less. Consequently, there are other factors that may come into play with RVs as permanent dwellings, such as the exterior storage and accumulation of personal belongings and makeshift porch additions and carports to expand their footprint. Not good for property values. And perimeter stockade fence does not cure these concerns. It undermines the intent of fostering the neighborhood family environment espoused by the code. We're also mindful that there's a class of landlord in this town that could take advantage of this ordinance and provide a substandard level of rental housing. By law, amendments must be consistent with the city's general plan. The housing and neighborhood element calls upon the city to promote quality, affordable, rental, and owner-occupied housing, revitalize target areas, build strong neighborhoods, develop high-quality housing developments. Staff finds that the amendments are contrary to achieving these goals. Moreover, we find approving the request will hinder the city's stated goal of fostering infill and redevelopment of the Cloud 9 and West Sierra Vista planning areas. This claim is supported by the protest petition that you received. To summarize and restate the three considerations that a text amendment application must satisfy, first, has the applicant demonstrated the need and justification for the change? The code places the burden of proof on the proponent. The more drastic the change, the greater the impact, the greater the burden is upon the proponent. The applicant's rationale is provided to you under Exhibit A of the staff report. Secondly, is the amendment consistent with the general plan? How does it further the purposes of the development code and other city ordinances and regulations? Thirdly, will the amendment benefit the general welfare of the community? If it constitutes the granting of a special privilege to an individual owner, the amendment should be denied. We are obligated to exercise equal treatment under the law. Spot zoning is an illegal form of rezoning. We need to consider this request on an area-wide basis. We created a chart for you under attachment B of our staff report, which shows the support and opposition for the request, both inside and outside the amendment area. Within Cloud 9, where this request originated, only 3 owners of 4 lots have signified their support of this request. In contrast, 8 owners of 132 lots have expressed opposition. That's 80% of the subdivision. Based on the findings and conclusions provided in our staff report, we recommend that the applicant's request be denied. You have a copy of the meeting minutes of the Planning and Zoning Commission that resulted in a 3-1 denial vote. On top of that, a written protest has been filed that meets the threshold in the code that triggers a supermajority approval requirement. This means that 6 votes are required for passage if the full council votes on this item. Now, the city attorney has notified the applicant's attorney that the city will refrain from pursuing formal code enforcement action against Mrs. Root, the applicant, while this petition is pending. The matter started with a notice of violation letter or a correction notice, which is a precursor to filing a court petition or issuing a citation if the matter is not resolved in a timely manner. And it's my recommendation that if the application is denied, that the city hold off on taking further action until the governor's emergency declaration order is lifted. Now, we've collectively considered all avenues to assist Mrs. Root, and like any other citizen facing a hardship, we are unfortunately unable to find an acceptable resolution on this matter. That concludes my staff report, and I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Matt. Questions for Matt? Yes, ma'am.
Well, so the other mobile home parks in Sierra Vista, they do allow recreational vehicles on their property, correct?
That is correct. Up to 30% of the spaces can be used for recreational vehicles within a park setting.
And had Ms. Root, talked about, had she even looked into those properties?
I think her position is she wants to stay where she's at. And whether she's looked or not, I'm not sure.
We have no way of knowing that.
Yes.
She is the underlying owner
Right.
of the lot. But she is the owner of the underlying lot under which the RV currently sits.
Oh, she owns the land she's on.
Yeah.
Right,
Okay.
because it's a manufactured home subdivision, so they own the land which the dwelling sits on, rather
Then
than
if
rent
she were
it.
to go to, you know, an RV park or whatever, she would have to pay rent to,
Please.
she would have to pay a lot lease to, park her RV there is what you're.
Correct.
Okay. That makes sense.
Matt, thank you for your presentation. With respect to alternatives that Mrs. Root had, or Miss Root has, did the city offer her any compensation or help with respect, I know she's in an RV, and I know that we've got some manufactured lots and mobile home parks and that are being rehabbed. I think Garden, yeah.
On Seventh,
Yeah.
on the west end.
Yeah,
Mhm.
on Seventh. Did we offer her any assistance at all?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Johnson, we did refer her to Good Living Ventures, who owns Garden Canyon Mobile Home Park. As you know, they're in the process of redeveloping their park, and there was a HUD-approved manufactured home that they were willing to donate. We referred that information to Mrs. Root, and she contacted the owner. They scheduled an inspection, but she did not make that appointment to view the unit. She saw some pictures and declined it.
Okay. So we made an affirmative effort as a city to try to help this woman out of this dilemma. Okay, thank you.
In that regard, yes.
Of the 30%, when the locations where 30% are authorized, they have to be in a designated area, and they're not permanent, though. They are, people come and park their RVs and then they leave.
No, they can live.
Or are they permanent?
They can be.
Now, is your question relate to manufactured home parks or the amendment before?
Manufactured home parks that offer that 30% can be RVs.
They can live there.
So if there's 100 space manufactured home park, 33 of those spaces can be devoted for RV rental purposes.
Okay, and that's permanent RV rentals.
However
It's not
long
permanent,
the
however,
lease
it's,
lasts.
yeah, the owner has discretion
Okay,
as to whether they're used for manufactured home spaces or RV spaces. But the limits to that discretion is the 30% cap.
okay, and then Mr., I'm gonna get his name correct.
Navasic.
Huh?
Navasic.
Navasic. Since he got these properties, he's been redeveloping them and trying to make them better. So why is he wanting to go back, if you know? Why does he want to go back to where some of it can be RVs?
He doesn't.
Doesn't.
He doesn't.
That's who the request was from. I'm sorry if I'm
No, no, no.
misunderstanding.
He opposes.
Okay, we're good then. I'm sorry. I thought he wanted to go back. I read it
No,
wrong.
no.
No,
I'm
in
just
fact,
trying to
he
get
said
it
it would
clear.
hinder his
Okay.
motivation to reinvest in the park.
But again, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Benning, I think your question gets to the main point of this, is that we have subdivisions that are, designed for manufactured homes, and people buy into them as owners with an expectation of what the neighborhood is going to be like. And that really, I think, gets to the heart of the
I agree.
of the issue.
Thank you, Chuck.
Yes, ma'am.
I attended the planning and zoning meetings when they were discussing this, and that did come up. There were residents that had spoke to planning and zoning commission. One of them from the West End, that they've lived there for 12 years. They participated in community cleanups, and they felt like if this passed, this would be a huge step back to all the work we've been doing over the years. It might be in the comments. too.
Anybody else? I'm sure it's in the comments, yeah.
So because this would affect all of these subdivisions, not just, it wouldn't just affect where she lives, it affects citywide, because it's the whole code to the whole city.
Now, we-
It relates to the
So all these-
subdivisions that are zoned MHR, and those are depicted in blue.
So where
in
we've done
Exhibit A.
all this work in like Solgar neighborhood
Right.
Right.
and Fry Town Site, where we've been doing all the cleanup.
Right.
And where we took out all those dilapidated trailers. This would it'd be a step, It'd be a step backwards from what we've done.
That's our estimation.
Okay.
Doctor, anything?
I didn't have anything.
I read through all the different comments from the public and stuff, and yeah, I do agree that it would be a step backwards in there, that it would undermine the city's revitalization efforts and stuff. So, and especially if there's already areas for those type of things.
You have options, you just don't want to.
Okay. Any other further comments? Thank you, Matt. Great job. I know it's been a long road to hoe, but we appreciate all the tough
We
work you and
appreciate
Mr. Pregler have done on this one, and the attorney, as well as some of our citizens that have offered to help in the community too. Okay, we now go to item number 5. Mr. Pregler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Let me bring up my presentation here. Very good. So what I'm going to do with this presentation, I'm going to kind of, for purposes of a little bit of history, I'm going to go back and talk a little bit about the legislation, then go right into the code amendments as was proposed by, or as was recommended at the earlier work session. So again, Prop 207 was approved by the voters on November 3rd, 2020, and this allows individuals 21 years of age or older to possess, purchase, consume, process, manufacture, and/or transport 1 ounce or less of marijuana. It also allows individuals to harvest up to 6 plants at a residence, or up to 12 plants if there's 2 adults present, and then the plants can be located in an enclosed building under lock and key. The legislation also provided a definition for marijuana establishments and allows marijuana establishments to be established in various local communities in the state. So the definition of marijuana establishments is a retail location where marijuana can be sold, cultivated, and manufactured, an off-site cultivation location where marijuana is processed and manufactured, an off-site storage location where marijuana is manufactured, packaged, and stored. Again, the Arizona Department of Health Services will be licensing these these recreational establishments. They started accepting applications for the early applications on January 19th. It'll run through March 9th. However, they have actually currently started issuing licenses. You may have seen these in Tucson, for example, and other communities where they have lines out the door for some of these establishments in those towns. Now, initially, there'll be no more than 2 establishments per county. As I stated in the last presentation, medical marijuana dispensaries are given priority. So if there's a medical marijuana dispensary in the community, then basically only 1 new recreational or adult use marijuana establishment can be established in that community. And there's currently 1 in Bisbee, which means that there can be 1 more in the county, at least during this early application process. Now, local jurisdictions do have limited discretion on regulating these marijuana establishments. If we do have local standards, they cannot be more restrictive than the medical marijuana dispensary standards. And again, as you recall, state law does allow for 3 regulatory approaches: prohibit medical marijuana establishments, allow with dual medical marijuana licenses, or allow establishments as standalone businesses. So, as you know, council held a work session on January 12th. The consensus from that work session was as follows. They want to allow the establishments both as dual license and standalone establishments. They want to keep the existing operational and development standards for medical marijuana in place.
Jeff, I just appreciate if you would say, instead of they would allow, the consensus was?
The consensus was.
There you go.
My apologies. The consensus was that they would keep existing operational and development standards for medical marijuana in place and would also apply those to the marijuana establishments. And finally, the consensus was that they would prohibit the use of marijuana on city-owned properties. So based on that direction from council, staff did create some text amendments and some language and has brought it before you today for your consideration. So the first section I want to talk about is section 151.02.004, definitions. Again, this definitions section was added and they were brought directly from the state legislation. So they are consistent with the state law. I do want to mention that a definition was included for public community center. I know there was some confusion at the last work session about what that exactly meant. As you recall, there was a minimum distance requirement to public community centers. So staff did the research and added a definition which states that a building owned by the city that is open to the public and is used for meetings, recreation, or social activities, and may have outdoor recreational facilities is considered a public community center. Okay, so next I'm going to talk about section 151.06.005, marijuana facilities. So the section is going to be called marijuana facilities because it's going to include 4 different types of facilities. One is going to be called the medical marijuana dispensaries, medical marijuana cultivation and infusion, the marijuana establishments, and then the marijuana testing facilities. So all 4 of these will fall under the heading of marijuana facilities. Now, testing facilities wasn't mentioned at the work session, but these are basically facilities that are operated by the Arizona Department of Health Services or a licensed entity that analyzes the potency of marijuana, and these facilities are not open to the public. Now, there are specific operational standards for these in the model ordinance, and so I went ahead and added testing facilities and included them as part of the same operational development standards as you would see for the medical marijuana dispensaries and the marijuana establishments. So first, talking about the submittal requirements under this section, I am requiring, or the staff is requiring and recommending a pre-submittal requirement prior to somebody applying for a business license or a building permit to open up an establishment. And the reason for that is because there are certain building code and fire code and, of course, zoning code requirements that will be required of these businesses prior to them opening shop. And so we want them to be aware of those standards prior to them making the investment into some of these buildings, especially if it's an existing building. They need to know what upgrades will be required of them. And it certainly helps to expedite the process along if they have these pre-submittal requirements in place. And then the other amendment to the section was that it consolidated all the existing submittal requirements into one section. Next, the development and locational standards. So in this section, we clarified these distance requirements. If you recall, the current language states that these facilities shall not be located within 500 feet of a residentially zoned property. And I believe it said preschool, kindergarten, secondary school, high school, and so forth. Well, staff realized as they do the research that we already have definitions in place in the current development code that address these particular types of schools. So when I add the word school, that covers all public schools. It also includes all charter schools. When I mentioned School of General Education, this covers all private schools that teach the standard K through 8 or K through 12 curriculum. And when I say a child care center licensed by the Arizona Department of Health Services, what this refers to is any preschool, any child care facility in town has to be licensed by ADHS, and there's actually a list in a database indicating those particular businesses that are licensed with them. So when I say child care center licensed by the ADHS, it refers to any child care facility, any preschool located in town. So it covers both preschool and child care with that language. In addition to which, as you saw previously, places of worship, public park, or public community center. And finally, staff did consolidate the existing development code and locational standards into one section. The operational requirements. So marijuana establishments and medical marijuana dispensaries will have the same operational requirements. We basically combine them with operational requirements as was stated in the model ordinance by the League of Arizona Cities. So again, these aren't particular requirements that we just came up with. These are actually codified by the Arizona League of Arizona Cities in their model ordinance. And many other jurisdictions in the state have used very similar operational requirements in their codes because of the model ordinance. Looking at marijuana testing facilities, again, we added new operational requirements, again from the model ordinance. And then looking at the medical marijuana infusion or cultivation facilities, those operational requirements have remained in place, no changes to those. And then finally, the matrix of use permissions. So marijuana establishments and marijuana testing facilities have been included as permitted uses in the general commercial zoning district. Again, this would be very similar and consistent to what was required previously with medical marijuana dispensaries, which are also allowed in general commercial zoning districts. And then medical marijuana cultivation or infusion facilities will continue to be allowed in industrial zoning districts. Then looking at the city code amendments, chapter 130.05, general offenses, we added definitions, which again came directly from state law, so it's consistent with the legislation. As you recall, state law does currently prohibit marijuana smoking in open spaces and public spaces. Again, open spaces being public parks, sidewalks, multi-use paths, things of that sort. Public places being any establishment in which the public is invited, such as restaurants, grocery stores, offices, that type of thing. That's what public places is defined as in the state law. Now added, and this was a discussion that the council had at the last work session, we're going to prohibit the smoking, displaying, consuming, selling, distributing, storing, cultivating, manufacturing, or production of marijuana on city-owned properties. There was a discussion about the term possession. That was removed from the definition because there was some concern about people carrying marijuana cigarettes on a bus. We also heard from the police department, they had a concern about the term displaying. They wanted us to include display, so people can't take the cigarette out of their pocket and display it to other folks on the bus or on public property. So for that reason, we have included the term displaying as well as part of this definition. So,
I'm so sorry.
Sure.
I totally disagree with that.
No, I don't actually disagree with it because I'm thinking it's almost like open carry, right?
Right, so
Displaying and-
obviously I would prefer no possession on city property. I'm thinking
Right.
of parks, skate park, et cetera. The way it was written without displaying is that you could have it in your pocket, you can be at the skate park, you can show all your friends, you could roll your cigarette in front of everybody, you just can't smoke it and consume it. And then the issue for us is over 21, under 21, somebody that appears close to 21 but we're not sure. It's a civil violation. They don't have to provide us ID. There's all kinds of issues that go along with the whole thing. But if they are displaying it, then it becomes an issue that we can actually start dealing with. That's why we asked if we couldn't have no possession on city property, then the displaying would need to be added to deal with those type of issues.
Okay, and that makes sense. So it's almost like a bus driver goes to the grocery store, buys legal alcohol, but they certainly can't have it out and open on a bus.
Well, they can't have it out. They can have it out. They just
Well, they
can't
could have it
open.
out if it's not open.
Right.
Yeah.
But the issue is gonna be more, I think, at city parks and that kind of stuff, with
But like,
them
you already
showing it to
can't
each other
have
and that
it.
kind of stuff. Hey, look what I got, let's go here, and then, my opinion on possession, say, the city library, somebody has it in their pocket, we are gonna have them drop it, or kids are gonna find it, it's going to happen. That could happen no matter what, even if it was illegal, but those that wanna comply with the law won't be bringing it in, they'll leave it in the car, such and such. That's why we asked for the no possession part of it, but the displaying is the next best thing for us.
It's already prohibited though it's already prohibited
Smoking only.
in
Smoking only in public
open
places by
spaces
state
and
law.
public places.
Smoking only, not consumption, not displaying it, not that kind of stuff.
I mean,
Smoking
isn't that consumption though?
They say, the state law specifically says smoking, so if you have marijuana brownies, they can eat those on city property, they can consume those in public. It doesn't say consuming, it says smoking.
Vaping.
Right.
I don't have an issue with this.
That's why we asked for it to be on.
Makes sense.
I'm against that. I'll just say that right now. That's way too restrictive, but go ahead. We're like way too far into people's business, but.
Okay. The Planning and Zoning Commission, they considered the code amendments at their meeting on January 25th. They did recommend, and I apologize for the confusion in the staff memo. It was a misunderstanding on my part, so I apologize. The recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission was that the minimum distance requirements to the schools, to the churches, to the public parks and so forth be reduced from 500 feet to 300 feet. 500 feet would still remain for residences from the residential zoning districts, okay? And then the 500 feet would remain, or the 300 feet would also be changed for the separation requirements between establishments. Okay, so really the biggest change was the 500 feet to 300 feet from the churches and schools and so forth. Yes?
Do you have the two different maps? Maybe if
That's-
you can't
that's-
do it right now.
That's
oh,
my next. That's my next.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Let me finish this, and I'll talk about the maps in just a second here. The reason why they wanted to go from 500 feet to 300 feet was they wanted to be consistent with the liquor license distance requirements, which require a 300-foot separation between the churches and schools and so forth. The second part of this, the recommendation was that the places of worship in general commercial zoning districts no longer be applicable to the distance requirements. Again, they felt that by doing this, it opens up many more areas in the community. And I will show you those maps even as we speak.
And when you say places of worship, you mean like strip mall churches?
That's correct.
It's really kind of what you're getting. We're
Basically,
getting at
that's
there.
correct. Yeah, correct. So here is the map. Let me see. Where's the? Okay, the no GC church buffer in 300 feet. So it opens up quite a bit of area along our commercial corridors here. Here's Fry Boulevard. Here is 9092. And then, of course, down to there, here to the mall. Oops. Get out of there. And additional areas along 92. So let me pull this back out. So this is basically what they were recommending was that with that 300-foot buffer distance from 500 to 300 feet, and then the GC churches be removed from that buffer minimum distance area.
Jeff, is this the residential map? Is this the one with the 500 residential?
Yeah.
Yeah, he says what they.
Did he
use
say
in
that?
the
I just don't see
like-
it on the tab, so I'm making
Oh.
sure.
Yeah, well,
It was left alone.
Oh, okay.
yeah, and here's the 500 foot. This is the current map. Okay, so this is how many areas that you would have.
And that does include the churches?
Yes, that does include the churches. That is correct.
But like, that's like the different kinds of churches, right? Like you said.
Right. So this does include all churches in the community, including those in the general commercial and in the commercial areas.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so general commercial churches versus other.
And that's how the
residents.
code's written today. Okay. And this is, let's see. And this is what was recommended by the Planning and Zoning Commission.
So let me make sure I'm clear. So the one you're showing that's recommended by P&Z is also included the 500-foot residential buffer.
The 500-foot residential buffer.
Because they're still recommending that residential have a 500-foot buffer.
Right.
So does that map include that?
I believe so. That's correct, right, Matt?
What was the final vote from the Planning and Zoning Commission?
It was a 3-0 unanimous vote with these conditions attached to it.
I didn't have an issue with the buffer when we were initially talking about this, but looking at the maps, I'm wondering if one of the concerns that we had about them being not so visible, since this gives it more opportunity to not be on like a main street, a main road, if this is better for addressing other concerns with
Yeah.
having it right there, like when you go to Tucson, it's right there.
So this is the 300-foot. This includes all churches, this particular map here. And so if you look at the 500-foot, here's the 300-foot.
I don't think
And then
churches
here's
is-
the no GC churches.
have anything
So you
to
kind
do
of see
with
the
that.
differences.
It just
in all
looks
of
like
them.
that's super close to residential. That's why I'm thinking. That's why I'm thinking that the residential was moved to 300 on this map too.
I'll check on that
Okay.
for you. Okay, and I'll bring it back a new map on Thursday.
That would be awesome. Just because I want to give a clear picture to the public, I have no issue with a 300-foot buffer. I will say that I've been approached by some people in the community, developers and people that just want to do this. And something that brought to my attention that I wasn't aware of is if you have a building that has a commercial loan on it that is through a federal institution, you cannot put a dispensary in that building. So that lowers the threshold for what buildings would be. So basically, it'd have to be a building that's free and clear of loans, which also lowers the choice of buildings, I'll say.
Yeah.
I'm still struggling with why churches are being not considered. I mean, it's a place of worship. I don't care if it's in a storefront or a cathedral. That concerns me.
The only thing I'll share with you is the latest trend is for churches who have formed to look for the cheapest commercial area. And we had this situation with a bar recently, well, I shouldn't say recently, a number of years ago, where a church opens up next door. The bar has been there 20, 30 years, and by the code at that time, they couldn't locate there. The church couldn't locate there. So we went through and made some modifications and made some exceptions. So the church could in fact operate at that location, and the bar didn't have to shut down. But again, it was established before the church. Now we've got a situation where the churches have been established in a commercial area.
Right.
And I think a church is a church like you do. And if we're concerned about 300 feet or 500 feet, I've lost what reach we're talking about here. But it should be the same whether they're located in a commercial area or a residential area or on the edge of town, in my mind.
Okay.
So I tend to agree with you, but again, I'm not as concerned about allowing the stores, the dispensaries, or whoever they want to call themselves, to locate all over town. They need to be in an area. If there needs to be a 300 feet buffer between the two types of stores, they probably need to have a 300-foot buffer between them and a church that's in the same commercial district. That makes sense to me.
So my comment would be the likelihood of us getting a dispensary is very slim to none.
Well, here's the one thing I want to check is right now it's 2 per county.
Right.
Does that mean that's going to be that way in the future?
Not necessarily, no.
See, that's the point. That's the point. Is we could have several at some point in the future.
In 30 years
Well,
or something.
It depends on when the state opens them up. They could open it up next year.
We would have to see like 10 more pharmacies pop up before they would release another.
Well,
Yeah.
We don't know.
Which
We don't
we
know?
don't know.
Well, that's how the law is
But
written.
This is
it's also,
definitely
they have to
long-term.
meet pretty stringent ADHS requirements.
Yep.
Right? They have to meet like
Well, we're talking-
pharmaceutical
Yeah, but when we're talking about
requirements.
distances, we're talking about making sure that we don't have a district where it becomes known as the marijuana district or whatever district you want to put on there.
Well,
because we went through the same-
confining to like
We went through the
this
same discussion a couple of years ago about
town will
adult,
create that, won't
quote,
it?
adult businesses.
I'm just
And we didn't
saying.
want to have clusters of adult businesses. And quite frankly, if they're spread out and they're doing business properly and we're not attracting vagrancy, and we're not attracting other things that are ills that could be this that come along with the adult stores as well. That's really our concern. We know we're gonna have to do this.
Yep.
But that we gotta do it in a way where it's controlled and where we maintain the quality of life in our community.
Well, and I'm in favor of
that's the
spreading
challenge.
out for that reason too, and not having this corner. They're all right here because that's the only corner where that's
Well, no,
not 500 feet.
You're saying it can be too restrictive, and I think you're right, it can be too restrictive.
I don't,
That's just,
if we're gonna do this, I just don't know why we just don't make it the same as liquor.
I know, that's why I'm like, it's
If
just
we're
the same
gonna
as
allow
liquor,
it,
just do like
then I
liquor.
say we allow it, and
Just allow
with
it.
the same restrictions as
Let
liquor.
me
Once we-
ask a base question here, because the report to council was hazy at best on the 3 items that had 500, that they wanted to change to 300. The proposal from staff is what?
Well, the
500
proposal from staff,
500 for what?
the proposal from staff is what is located in Exhibit A. That's 500 feet separation to residential zoning districts.
Okay, residential zoning.
500 feet from schools, churches, parks, and public community centers.
Okay,
500-foot separation between the dispensaries themselves.
okay.
I'm fine with that.
So
That's fair.
that's 500, 500, 500. And what you were saying was, to open it up, you need to have, the last two should be 300.
All but residential
All
should be
but
300
residential.
is what P and Z recommended.
Yeah, that's what P and Z
And that
recommended.
makes a
That's
lot of
fine.
sense.
That makes
Okay.
sense.
So that's not written that way as the staff recommendation though.
That's correct.
So what needs to happen, if those are your feelings, before we go to a final vote, someone needs to make an amendment or propose an amendment to change that. So it's 500, 300, and 300 rather than 500 all the way down, if you want to do that.
Yeah. Or we could correct it, Mr. Mayor.
Well, it's early enough to correct it.
Yeah.
So I guess you're asking me to ask, is there a consensus of council to make it 500, 300, and 300?
Well, here's my question. Are we voting on this? Is this going to public hearing? Like, what is this
Oh, that-
process? I mean, that's.
Okay, Jeff,
What's
tell us what
going
the
on, right?
process
Good
is.
question.
What's going on? We're going
right.
to public hearing.
It's
What's
public
going on?
hearing.
I don't even know what's going on.
It's an
Yeah,
emergency day.
so what's going to happen, this is a little unique situation for this particular public code amendments. The typical process, as you know, is it comes to public hearing, there's a 30-day public comment period, and then it goes back for ordinance for final adoption. In this case, what's going to happen is because of the March 9th deadline is so close, we need to make sure there's enough time for applicants to have the city sign off on the zoning compliance forms and final location and submit that to the state. That's March 9th. Obviously, our next meeting would be after March 9th. So what we're going to do is we're going to declare an emergency at the meeting on the 11th, which basically means
if there
there's
are adequate votes.
yes,
to do
yes.
so.
You need that requires a supermajority. Has to be 6 votes on the commission on the council in order for that emergency declaration to be approved. If there's not 6 votes, but there's a majority, let's say it's 5-2, 4-3, the amendments will still pass, but they will not. But the emergency declaration will not pass, which means that I guess and correct me if I'm wrong here.
There's a 30-day public comment period after the approval.
Well,
it's not even a public comment period, Mayor, members of council. It's a 30-day referral period before before an ordinance or regulation or resolution becomes operative. If you do not pass it using the emergency measure.
so it could potentially be repealed.
And then
Potentially.
the people that are interested in getting a business or getting this license, and they just
So
Have to wait.
they would
the
not.
zoning compliance form from the state, I have reviewed the language. They basically give you the local jurisdictions 3 or 4 different options for them to sign off on these zoning compliance forms. One of them is written in such a way where it says something to the effect that they have if this location is potentially going to meet the zoning regulations, then you can go in and sign off on it. And that's in that particular case, that's what we would do. We would still sign off on the application, but it would be that particular option that we would sign off on. And they would file that with the state for their license.
And hopefully that would be
Is
sufficient.
that
And that's my
next-
question, yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
does that work?
Is how likely,
don't
if
know.
another jurisdiction is already completely past the process, how likely are they to get the license rather than the person from Sierra Vista applying?
Well, I can tell you that Bisbee is behind us in terms of the process, and Benson's behind us in terms of the process. So
Thank you.
we're
That's
ahead of
good
them.
information to know. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Sure.
Did that answer your question, Sarah? Okay.
Can
Because I'm not
Can
sure
I,
I'm
can
clear
I
on it.
speak to the footage here? I'm not gonna vote for this, I'll tell you this right now. But I've done a lot of studying about this. I've gone to all the pro-marijuana websites, and there's no problem when you open up a recreational dispensary. I don't know why they call it a dispensary, it's a store. But the most recent study that was done by John Jay College of Criminal Justice in New York City was just released in the January of 2020. And I know I've got a doctor sitting next to me that has done academic studies. And what they found was that It analyzed the criminal effect of legalizing marijuana, marijuana dispensaries in Denver. And it was discovered that street segments or blocks in close proximity to a recreational marijuana dispensary experienced an 18% increase in property crimes. Now think about this. What you're doing is you're advocating for 300 feet, 500 feet. We're talking blocks. Blocks. And I know the retail list price of 1 ounce of marijuana, from my understanding, is around $200. You don't think that the cartels are going to have folks nearby say, would you like to buy an ounce for $80? So, you're kidding yourself. And what they did is they discovered the cost-benefit analysis found with associated crime costs were largely offset and barely cost-effective when you only considered the tax revenue coming into the city. So I just throw that out there because I've done a lot of research on this. It's really troubling to me that 207 passed, and now that it has, we're trying to deal with this as a city. I know Wilcox is interested in a dispensary, as Sarah pointed out. I know Wilcox, Benson, maybe Bowie. And I'll tell you, Huachuca City's got a great brand new location when they painted the old strip joint. So I'm going to vote against this regardless of whether it's 300 or 500 feet. But I wanted you folks to know that this council person did his homework and looked into the negative effects of what can happen when we put a dispensary near a residential area, a church, a school. I've said my piece. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Jeff, any other questions for Jeff? Jeff, what else do we need to finish up?
I just wanted to talk about some public comments which I've received as well. I've received a total of 16 written comments. I believe you have copies of those. Basically, many of those comments discussed the pros and cons of allowing these dispensaries. They didn't specifically talk about the language itself. However, I did receive this morning 2 written comments from a local commercial real estate folk, and he had a couple of questions and concerns. One is that there right now is a 2,000 square foot building maximum requirement for medical dispensaries as well as the recreational dispensaries. And again, the thought there being was that 2,000 square feet was too small. It limits investment opportunities for these marijuana establishments. He had a recommendation of maybe going either to 5,000 square feet or not having a limit at all in terms of the building maximums. The other comment that he made as well was that they'd like to consider allowing the marijuana establishments in industrial zoning districts as well. Again, looking at potential locations in industrial zone properties, which may have opportunities there for him as well. So those are 2 other issues for you to consider. I did create something maybe as a compromise if the council would maybe consider changing the maximum building square footage requirements, that we look at it in terms of a maximum square footage of net floor area rather than the overall building size. Floor area basically is the retail usable area, so that area which would be where the sales would be located would basically have a maximum attached to it. There will not be a maximum for the rest of the building, so storage areas, bathrooms, and manufacturing areas, there would not be any type of limit on that, but there would be a limit on the actual floor area itself. So something else to consider.
I think that's acceptable. It is to me.
Here's what needs to go on. At this point in time, either we come to a consensus on this, and I don't appreciate bringing up things at the last minute. This should have been discussed in an earlier part. However, you put it on the table. So what I would recommend is that if we have a consensus, we look at this, maximum floor area, and we have to decide today, put it in or not. And this could be another future discussion item once it goes down if it fails. But is there anybody? that's concerned about giving more than 2,000 square feet, other than the realtor who's trying to sell square footage to a building? I don't know. But what is 2,000 square feet? Is that 50 by 40, or 50 by 400, or 500 by 40, or what's is it as big as this room?
500 by 2.
That's bigger than this
Oh,
room.
500 by 2, that helps me. Yeah, you can have a longer hallway.
Long and narrow, Mr. Mayor.
Full house.
And that's one of the- that's one of the reasons why I bring this up at the last minute.
It's a
It's probably
residential
not appropriate.
house.
Yeah,
About a
residential
resident,
house.
about the size of a
Okay.
residential house is
Correct.
2,000 square
That's
foot.
correct.
My house is about 2,000 square feet. Okay?
Right.
So that's pretty big in my opinion. So I don't think we need to deal with this right now. I think there's plenty of space, and how they allocate what's storage, what's bathrooms, what's service area, what's counter space, it's up to them.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to, I want to commend Councilmember Johnson, I mean, for sticking up with what his vote is. I'm voting yes for the minimum. I want the minimum restrictions, and my reason is, I don't want to legislate against what the people decided they wanted to do. We did that back in Prohibition, we see what came with that, and we do it more and more. If the state of Arizona says something's legal, like alcohol, then we need to make sure the restrictions meet the zoning and the criteria for our residents, and let people be entrepreneurs and let people to make decisions on their own. And I think marijuana plays the same role. We can kick the can down the road, shoulda, coulda, woulda, but the problem is the people said this is illegal. The state said it's legal now. I want to do it like we do alcohol, make sure we do it responsibly as a city, but allow people to do what they're gonna do anyway, just like we do with alcohol, liquor stores, et cetera. And I think that eliminates a lot of the, and I agree with you on, no matter what we do, it's, illegal marijuana is still gonna be there, because there's a market for it, just like moonshine's still there in some cities, in some states. We can't eliminate everything, but if we make it the best we can make it, and allow people to follow the rules and do it properly, then we minimize those risks, in my opinion. Instead of us saying, well, we didn't agree with it, I didn't vote for it, and I didn't vote for it either. I'll stand up here and say, I voted against it. But it's passed, so now we have to be responsible, and we have to responsibly do the people's bidding. And I think by keeping it with alcohol, like I said earlier, the same restrictions, I think we do that. So depending on what's getting written up, because I'm confused now what's gonna be written up by Thursday, but I'm gonna vote yes if it's 5, 3, and 3, 3, 5, and 5.
Yes, ma'am.
I just, so,
3 and 5.
3 and 5.
3 and
So,
Yeah, 3.
just liquor license requirements with the exception of residential, I think is the easier way to say
Exactly.
it, with an additional residential buffer. Mayor, I just want to say, I thought I was okay with the emergency declaration, but now with the new things coming up, I think maybe doing the 30-day public, especially in light of knowing that the other cities in the county are not as far along in the because that was my big concern, was if other cities were ahead of us, not having that 30-day period for us to look at some of these newer things, and with public comment, I just can.
That brings up the next issue is, do we have consensus to support the Mayor Pro Tem's position that we need to not have on Thursday the inclusion of the emergency clause, emergency declaration?
I don't think we need to have that. I personally.
See what the emergency is.
I
Well,
agree.
Is there?
Well, originally, again, I was okay with it.
The
because-
emergency was really there to make sure that we had something in statute by the time people had to apply.
Right.
The
Do they-
9th of March.
Do they have to apply by then, or is that like
Well,
when
they
they
had-
can
that's-
start
Do
applying?
they have to apply by then, or that's the start?
That the
They can
application
start, and then at any time after that, they can,
has to be in by March 9th.
has to be in
Yes,
by
that
March.
is
But Jeff was saying, and I have seen the form, is that there is a form that indicates that we can say it's
Well,
passed, but not in statute yet.
what's gonna stop other cities from just
Doing
handing
the
those
Doing
out?
an
Same thing.
emergency declaration.
No, well, that too, yeah, but I'm thinking the forms. If they're behind us even,
Well-
like.
Because we've
everyone's
passed
gonna-
it, we've voted. We'll have voted on Thursday, right?
Oh,
Yeah, that's correct.
I think, Mayor, I'll just say, I think we either need to take these other considerations that have come up last minute, the 2,000 square foot and industrial zoning, although I guess in my head, I assumed it was already allowed in
That's what I thought.
industrial, because I thought it was, you know, kind of down the line with industrial, but that's a whole other educational piece I'll look at later. But we either need to not worry about this, because I haven't actually had time to even
Okay, so.
research
What
and
what I'm hearing, and you guys, if I'm off base, shout out me vociferously. But, the 200 square foot requirement, we don't wanna act on yet, nor do we wanna act yet on the industrial zoning portion. We don't wanna address those on Thursday.
They could always be amended.
And they can always be amended later
Okay.
if it's appropriate, okay? And the council feels it's appropriate.
Can you bring back?
So we're still talking 500, 300, and 300 on the separation, okay?
What about the churches, Mayor?
That's the 300.
That's the 300. One of the 300s.
well, that's the same as liquor license.
Okay,
That's the
so
I
that
mean, you can
means,
have a bar.
that means we
Yeah.
will not need, and you got to tell me, we will not need the, if we're gonna wait, we don't need the emergency clause.
You don't need it. I mean, if it was there, you would just have a motion that would include the emergency. If it's a 5-2 or 4-3 vote or whatever the case may be, there's just simply no emergency.
What does need to happen in the language is that 500, 300, and 300 need to be reflected, because that was the recommendation, okay, by
P and Z.
and concurred with by staff, I'm assuming, okay? And the other thing that needs to happen is we need to get rid of the references to the emergency clause.
Mr. Mayor, I thought staff recommendation was 500 across the board. Isn't that
Well,
what you
that
said,
was,
Jeff?
well, tell me, I'm getting confused here because I've heard three different things in the last 2 days, Jeff.
Staff's recommendation is what is in Exhibit A, and that is a 500-foot separation. Okay.
So what's gonna have to happen if there are people on Thursday that wanna change the last 2 to 300? We need to have a motion,
There needs to be an amendment.
a motion to amend to that effect. Okay?
This is so unclear.
No, it's simple. It's really simple. We now have the staff recommendation of 500, 500, 500. We've talked today about change to 300, 300, and I don't think we have a consensus on that. So the best way to deal with that at that point in time is when the item comes up, Jeff gives his briefing. If we want to discuss, we discuss. When there comes an amendment, somebody can propose an amendment to go to 5, 3, and 3, or just the 3 and 3. And we vote on that, and if it carries, it's in. If it doesn't carry, it's not in.
Stays at 500.
And we go to the, we go back and vote on it, and we don't include anything with, the emergency clause at all.
So
That
you
can be
would like
taken out
that
by
sec-
consensus today,
You would like that stricken then?
as of today.
Okay.
I don't know if I'm getting a look over here.
Am I confusing everybody?
No,
Okay.
Okay.
Do you think an emergency clause?
So having the emergency clause allows people to submit what they need to by the deadline?
Yes.
The non-emergency, so not having it be an emergency, people will miss the deadline and they will not be able to.
They'll apply, they can apply with the caveat that it is approved but has not taken effect yet.
It's not it's not actionable.
Okay. Normally, when a law goes in, when we pass something, it's usually 30 days before it becomes effective, okay? And then it's law. So in this case, it wouldn't be effective yet, but it's been passed, and they can say in their form to the state that there are existing laws that we will abide by, but they're not in effect until whenever the 30 days past Thursday is. So they can still apply. Am I off base there, Mr. Attorney?
No, that is, you are correct, Mayor.
Okay.
So would that be a separate vote?
No.
That would be a clause to the motion.
The emergency
The thing
declaration.
is, as it stands right now, we would have to do it. What I asked is to remove the emergency declaration away from what we're voting on,
Okay.
so that we don't get into that, since there's other method for the person to apply. But we're talking application to the state versus our action here. I think that may be confusing.
If the state received, how many are left? 35, 36 recreational.
I'm just trying to follow.
I don't know how many are left. But if they receive
Gretchen.
applications for all of those and they're ready to go, and then there's the person from our community with their, it's gonna happen, you know, they're probably not gonna give them preference to, right?
We don't know that.
Well, that's what I want to
No,
know.
we don't know. I mean, there could be 35 people from
Their
our
decision.
community asking for that form, so they'll all have the same form that we would have signed off on, and then the state determines who gets the license out of those 35 in our
We
community.
have no influence on
Yeah.
how the state decides who gets the license.
Right. I just don't want to hinder anyone from potentially getting one for our community.
You don't want to hinder a business from
Mr. Mayor, it's,
Be a stringent application. It's like, it's like, it comes from ADHS, so it doesn't come from the board of like liquor licenses. It's like applying for a pharmacy license. It's a really stringent. I'm just saying, it's not an easy process.
No, understood. I don't think it's a problem.
well, we owe you, I think, three things, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. One, we need to clean up the language that's in there regarding the footage. Second, you know, for anybody that cares to offer an amendment to make it 300 instead of 5, we can draft an amendment so that, you know, whoever wants to do that can be prepared to do that. The emergency clause, I'm not really viewing, Mr. Mayor, as a large deal, because you can simply move that an emergency exists. If there are 2 votes against, then the emergency clause does not take effect. So, I mean, we
Well,
could strike it too, and it wouldn't be part of the
I'm
discussion.
anticipating there'll be at least 2 votes against.
So then there wouldn't be, the emergency clause
Those
wouldn't
wouldn't
take
pass
effect
anyway.
anyway.
And it's more efficient not to have it rather than.
We can do that too.
Okay, so we just need to amend if we choose to on Thursday night.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, everybody's clear as mud?
Seemed like a long way to get there for that.
Well, it is moving fast and it is a complex thing.
Yeah, it
so.
is.
I would like the piece that we added that is not on city property. Can we talk about that? Can you show
Piece that
that?
we asked,
That was our addition, right? That's the city's addition. That's not state law, correct?
Correct.
She's talking about the area in blue here?
Yes.
Okay.
is that,
That is the city's addition. That's not state law, where we said we prohibit smoking, displaying, consuming, selling, distributing, storing, cultivating, manufacturing, producing marijuana on city-owned property. I don't know. I just feel like I don't know. Like, well, first off, it's like already defining city-owned property outside of public places, which is already public places is already parks, multi-use paths, open spaces, grocery stores, etc. Like you already can't be in public, which is not even city property. You can't be in public.
Right.
You know.
well, the reason I support most of the things in here, I
I'm-
support this, is when we get to the court with an individual, and Chief gave a great example, there will be people in the park, in the skate park, other places that will be doing more than just displaying their joints. And we need to make sure that we can arm our officers with the right language so that when it goes to court, they can in fact enforce the law. And that's why I'm in favor of all those items that were added.
Yes.
And I know that's a tough one for a lot of people.
does displaying, I mean, does that include like clothing that has marijuana on it? Like,
No. We're talking at the actual
product.
Product.
okay.
You know, you can still wear your Cheech and Chong hat with the smoke rings coming off of
I
it.
mean, that's not my style. I'm just the same.
I know you're into hats, but that's not the kind of hats you're into.
I am into hats. I don't know.
Okay.
I'm
So
gonna
we
think
got,
about- I'm gonna
we
think
still got
on that one.
some thinking to do on this, I know.
I do.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else for today on this item?
I just have one more question.
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to make sure, again, I'm just trying to make sure I understand, because we have gone in 5,000 different directions today. So when since we've decided to, we know there's not going to be an emergency, it is listed as a public hearing item. Are we going to have to vote again on this in March? No. Okay, thank you, Nathan, that's what I wanted to know.
If people are encouraged to come talk to us as soon as we get the staff report, as
Okay,
usual.
so so Thursday is the public hearing, we're voting, it will take effect then 30 days from there.
Yes.
I just wanted to be clear which
Okay.
public hearing we were doing. Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
Jeff, what else you got? I don't want to cut you off. You've done a good job.
Yep.
Thank you. I apologize for the confusion. I just did want to clarify that 300 foot to schools, and then remember, it's going to exclude the storefront churches in GC. That's what that design, as long as you're aware of that fact, then we're good.
Okay.
Okay? All right.
Okay, one more, sorry. Can you call somebody that would know if it's going to make a difference?
On the
If we
emergency
pass it,
declaration.
sorry, I'm still there, sorry.
Emergency
We're with
clause.
you. I'm with you.
Thank you. Is there somebody like we can call?
About
Like, hey,
what
is
are you
this
talking about?
going to, if
If
people are
the lack of an
applying-
emergency clause is
Oh.
going to
Yeah.
Negatively impact.
hinder somebody from getting.
Yeah, like they're not
from
ready to
having a
go yet,
successful
they're gonna go down
application.
the list and we'll take these 35 others, even if they.
I don't know who that would be, but we can attempt to
They can
do
try.
that.
I feel like that's
Very
the number in my head.
knowledgeable.
I don't think, quite frankly, I don't think the state has the answer there.
I don't think they do either.
We can certainly ask the
Yeah,
question.
they probably don't, but
Mayor,
you.
council member
Showing-
Humphrey, we do have a contact name. How quickly they'll get back to us from Department of Health Services, I can't say, but we do have a contact
okay,
that we can reach out to.
thank you.
And Jeff, maybe sending that same sheet that you showed me the other day, maybe so they can all read the same language would be helpful.
Send it to the city clerk and she can forward it on.
Thank you.
Okay.
Get a contact.
Further discussion? All
I
right.
got a dealer.
Now we get to go to the fun stuff.
Potty.
All right, where were we here? Let's see, amendments to the code. I guess we're going to new business, item 6, is that where we are?
What are we on?
I
Is it
think
number
we're
6?
done.
Yeah.
6, okay.
Item 6, Chief Thrasher.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Before you is an intergovernmental agreement between the City of Sierra Vista and the Arizona Department of Transportation regarding providing traffic crash data to ADOT and using their web portal to be able to provide that data. We've been doing this for years. This is a renewal of an IGA regarding that so that they can publish our crash data in the statewide statistics. It is also the first step that needs to be done for implementation of electronic crash forms that the officers then can fill out and submit to ADOT straight from their car computers, which will add some efficiencies into the issue as well. But this is the first step along that as well. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Chief. Questions for the chief on this item? Yes, ma'am.
Do we, like, how do you analyze crash data? Just a curiosity, like, how do you use it?
So we internally do our own regarding causes of accidents, locations of accidents, times, days, those kind of things for enforcement, specific enforcement type issues, as well as working with Public Works regarding design of roadways and that type of stuff. The state does the same thing, but they have a more detailed analysis of statewide data regarding the causes of the accidents, and they'll even get into seatbelt usage and that type of stuff. So the state does more details than we do regarding the deal, and then we will also now be able to access their data as well and get their analysis.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you, Chief. We appreciate that. Now go on to item number 7. Again, Chief Thrasher.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Before you is authorization to accept the grant from the Department of Homeland Security regarding Operation Stone Garden. We have been doing this for several years. Operation Stone Garden is a program where it partners up federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies, where the federal government provides funding through the Department of Homeland Security in Arizona to provide extra officers to provide security along border counties and issues. So basically what they do is they pay for officers on overtime to be in specific areas of the county to act as a force multiplier for Customs and Border Protection as part of their overall strategy to reduce human and drug smuggling. This grant is for $81,059 for overtime and employee-related expenses. It pays all employee-related expenses, including PS, PRS liability regarding that overtime worked, and $12,061 for mileage for the vehicles that are being used, mileage and maintenance. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Just quickly, you mentioned the PSPRS payment. Is that a new thing?
No, that's been part of the grant for several years.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions for the chief? Thank you, Chief Thrasher. Appreciate you being with us tonight. And to conclude the meeting, we have the call of the public comments and requests to council, and then the adjournment. Item 2B is discussion on the 2021 legislative agenda. Chuck, who's going to do this?
Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Victoria.
So thanks, Mr. Mayor. In the interest of time, I'm going to hit the highlights on this, but of course, anybody can interrupt questions at any time. So again, what this does is it establishes the city's priorities on certain topics that are important to the city while the legislature is in session, and to a lesser extent, the federal government throughout the year. So there's a number of guiding principles and key priorities that we list in here, and I'll hit the highlights of what is in there, and then we look at it every year to add additional detail on things that may come up throughout the year, specific items that of importance. And it's a tool that can be both proactive but is usually reactive. It's proactive if the city wants or intends to make a specific ask of the legislature during the year. We did do that 2 years ago when we requested funds from the state to support CCOM and the radio network. We were successful in that. We are not running anything specific this year or making any specific requests. So what is covered in the agenda and the major issues, one good example is the very first one under fiscal sustainability. And so it states that the city's position is preserving our shared revenues, which includes sales tax and income tax at the current distribution level. And why that's so important, and a really good example and why we include something like this, is because this year the governor has proposed reducing the state income tax, and so that would affect the city's shared revenue distribution over the next 5 years, because it would take 2 years to go into effect. So that's something then that we would look at and say we would oppose this because it goes against this key principle that we have adopted. So we also support the long-term viability of all of our state retirement systems. We specifically mentioned the public safety retirement system and asking for transparency and anything that would restore viability to the system, although I believe there are a few bills this year that affect it, but since over 1,600 bills have been introduced so far this year, I'm still going through all of them. Local authority is a really important one, and this one comes up fairly often with any number of bills introduced by the legislature each year. And so we establish the position that we seek to protect city council's local control and your decision-making authority, and that you oppose any effort to erode that control through any preemption or mandates from the state. And that can happen in a number of various ways. There's already a number of bills this year that would do that. One example would be, and actually falls to a degree under economic development under that, where we mention 5G, But there's a telecom bill that's been introduced right now that would preempt your ability to establish right-of-way costs and fees for permits and recoup that cost. And so because that would preempt control at a local level, we would generally not support a bill like that. Military preservation and expansion. The city always seeks to sustain or expand long-term mission viability at Fort Huachuca. A number of different ways that also carries over to our federal agenda. One of the specific points that's being made under this section is advocating for the State Military Affairs Commission to begin meeting regularly again and to fund the Military Installation Fund. Mayor Pro Tem Gray has been very active in that effort. There is an additional point paper attached to this agenda, which we don't usually do, but we did in this case to further explain what the issue is. And that's attached at the end of this to give more detail on why the city would be asking for that and why it's important to the city. Under transportation, we advocate for future infrastructure improvements, a very important item. Under public safety, we added a new item this year regarding the development of state guidance on storage and retention of body-worn camera data, and asking that the state consult with us on the development of any statewide requirements. We added that because there has been so much talk since last year about including something like this, or the legislature running a bill that would require cities to implement body-worn cameras and so on. And so we added a specific statement, or we add a specific statement whenever we have an awareness that something like that is going to come up and want to establish what our position is before the legislative session. Finally, we do include a short federal legislative agenda, and that's important when annual trips to Washington, D.C. occur, either with the mayor and Chuck and other interested parties, or city council members go to National League of Cities. Again, it's primarily based on military preservation and expansion and advocacy for military retention or mission retention and expansion. And is much more general than our state legislative agenda. And then you'll have the policy paper to wrap up your legislative agenda. Be more than happy to take any questions, any revisions, any further explanations on any of the specific issues that anyone might have.
And of course, she's available for in-depth discussions if you're so inclined. So any questions, discussion items off this today?
Just thank you for updating the numbers under the military affairs stuff. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, one other point I want to make is that this is important to us because the legislative session moves fast. There's been 1,600 bills dropped. They're in hearings right now, and things come up with strikers, and this gives us the council guidance we need so that we can provide feedback both to our lobbyists and the league and to our legislators in the event that something comes up quickly. So
I'll just add too that this document also helps our lobbyists at the state capitol. So because things happen so fast up there, if they're not aware of what our desires are, we'll lose no matter what.
And it's also communicated to, it's shared with our legislators, so they see specifically to what the city's position is.
Okay, any other things, any other comments?
Just a couple comments. I didn't see anything on the part of the city as far as legislative priorities regarding like COVID or health, which is gonna be a huge topic.
Well, yeah, you need to understand that this usually is put together in the latter part of the year, and we didn't have all the issues, we didn't have all the, I don't want to say issues, the controversies with, well, there's a lot of things going on with the health department that we weren't even prepared to address. That's a good point, because one thing we probably need to look at for next year's agenda is the fact that in rural Arizona, it's the county health department runs the show. That we may have specific recommendations on how they can best coordinate or be funded by the state to meet
Well,
pandemic
and how,
issues
yeah, and how
and
they're
those kind of things.
even distributing vaccines and
Yeah, I
how
mean, there's a
they're
whole-
distributing
there should be a whole
testing
list of
and.
things, but again, we need to sit down
Yeah.
and come up with a plan and see if we can be impactful and make a positive effect. We can't just say this was a problem and it's screwed up. That's not the
No.
point of this. The point is to come up with some valid suggestions on how we can do things better.
Yeah.
So that's gonna take some time.
Yeah, and a good example of that is we were on we attended a conference seminar where the Coconino County manager, who manages the Coconino County Health Department, had talked how they had partnered with the cities in Coconino County for vaccine distribution and that kind of thing. And our model seems to be broader, shall we say, include doctors' offices, pharmacies, et cetera, but not necessarily the cities. So we could have, I think, been a help in that regard.
Okay, so that's potential for the next time. Anything else on this item? Okay, the next item is item C, is the executive report. And if you guys don't mind, I want to start with a couple of compliments. When I went to page 11, where we're talking about the United Way and how they're doing, I appreciate the fact that they added the last two on the beneficiaries, the last two columns on beneficiaries, so we get a better idea how many persons and how many families are benefiting from that program. I think that's a big plus. I also want to note that on page 21, for the first time, we have some summary notes of commission meetings, because it's not always easy to get to all the commission meetings and even for the liaisons. So by having that summary, I think that helps us gives us a little more information as to what's actually going on in the commission. So I want to thank you for those two additions. Anybody else have comments on the executive report? Sir?
I just want to highlight on page 24, the Snyder Project. I know we were talking about it at Parks and Rec also. With COVID, it's hard to see the progression and hard to see where we're going with the project. But the electric bill itself is a big indicator that it was a good decision that we made. It was the right decision. And hopefully once COVID opens and the parks can open back up, I know we have some good tournaments
How about
coming.
the Snyder Project?
Snyder Project, yes. What did I say? But, so I just want to point that out, and it shows it was a good decision. I look forward to seeing where it's going even more.
Okay. Anybody else, question, comment? Yes, ma'am.
I had a comment. Just one, and this was kind of personal comment. On the fire department, what is that? COVID protocols. So you all know I just got over COVID. It's not fun. It was not a fun experience. I don't recommend it. And so I'm still wearing my mask. Still coughing sometimes, but just got out of quarantine. But I never got a fever, not once. Never got a fever. Never had a temperature, not once. And
It just tells us you're young.
right. But I was in bed for like 6 days. But I mean, have we considered doing anything like surveillance testing or any kind of like testing, like regular testing of our first responders? Like,
Well,
Chief Jones was on there.
Chief is like, well, I can respond. Chief Jones, is he available?
Chief Jones, are you on the net?
it's just something to think. I mean, just kind of putting a bug in your ear, I guess, of like, think about that, like where you do, you can do surveillance testing where you do, you can test the whole department where they just like surveillance where they just do like swabs of 10 people in one shift, and they take it as a surveillance swab, and then if that whole swab comes up positive, then then they'll do a more in-depth, okay, now we'll code all the tests and see who's positive or whatever, but otherwise we won't, do like code all the tests and do contact tracing. But like, so it's just a less intensive way to test, but it's just a way to like, just kind of monitor frontline populations. Anyways, it was just, there's things like that with like healthcare workers and frontline populations that are available to that other. Anyways, I just noticed in the executive report we're taking temperatures and we are doing cleaning and stuff, but we're not like. I feel like we could be more aggressive in making sure that we're still fighting COVID. It's really serious, and I don't think that vaccination is going to move very quickly. It just isn't moving very quickly, and it's not going to move very quickly, unfortunately. Doesn't seem like it's going to move very quickly. We all wish like we wanted it to be this miracle thing, right? But it's just not, and so.
Okay, well, one of the things we need to do is get Chief Jones.
Well, I think Chief is on here.
I'm here.
Can you share your protocols, please, with the council, Chief?
Absolutely. Mayor Mueller, members of council, member Pacheco, we are doing the testing at 8 and 10 and 8 o'clock at night. We are also really any kind of signs and symptoms anybody is having, we are testing them that day. We are also testing personnel that have had an exposure or had COVID themselves, testing them multiple times before they are able to come back to work. When we do in the report, you see that in December, the number of cases was monumental for us. And the hospital does contact us when they do have a positive test. And we do evaluate that personnel and ensure that they have not been subjected to getting COVID or have the signs and symptoms for that, and test them if they have been. So we have been actually pretty aggressive in the way we've been handling it. Our stations are closed to the public to ensure that nobody comes in contact. They come in one door, they come out one door for the same door for work. So we are doing probably above and beyond what we are should be doing to ensure that we have the operational force ready to respond to the calls that we're getting.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Also, Councilmember Pacheco, the first responders were in vaccine 1A and then police in 1B, and the numbers are going up with regards to personnel that are being tested and are voluntarily or vaccinated and are voluntarily taking the vaccine. So I do anticipate those numbers will continue to rise, and we'll be going out to the rest of essential staff here pretty soon. So you're right, the numbers are not where we'd like to be in terms of how many doses the county is receiving, but our staff is proceeding through the process, and we are getting vaccinated. Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir.
Yes, this is my first exposure to the council executive report, and I want to thank staff and all the folks that put this thing together. It was really comprehensive and well done. My hat's off to you. I do have a question on page 27. I'm kind of an economic development guy, and I noticed here just the paragraph just on top of the Fry Boulevard streetscape. It says staff will consider pursuing an economic development administration grant funding after we have completed the ground preparation, that's moving the mountain. Mm-hmm. If awarded, this funding will significantly offset the costs associated with the development work. Now, what would this, first of all, I know you met with Garrison Commander today. Have we come to any idea as to where we're going to put the excess soil on Fort Huachuca, or was that not an agenda item?
Well, Mayor Mueller, Councilmember Johnson, there is a budget for moving what we affectionately call Mount Dooley at the airport, and our goal is to make the remaining 13 acres we have available at the airport ready for a developer, meaning the site is prepped, we can get utilities to it, all those kind of things to make it more attractive for somebody to come in. Part of the process is to work with the fort on the potential of moving the dirt onto fort property. And of course, since it's federal, there are a lot of processes we have to go through. Mr. Boone has been very instrumental for us, given his knowledge of those processes and working with the airport manager, Carol, up there on the post. And we did talk to the garrison commander today, and it is somewhere in limbo between Carol at the airport and the garrison. So that means probably with JAG right now. So that's where it's at. We hope to get a affirmative response here soon, and then we'll have a place to move the dirt and save significant budget dollars by doing that.
Now that grant funding, what would that entail, and what are we talking about?
Well, the EDA grant would be available then, assuming we get the dirt moved and everything, to help us if we have a potential prospect. That would be used for, say, building a spec building or hangar or something like that to assist us then for lease to that prospect. So again, that would be a money savings to the city if we're able to do that.
Thank you, thank you.
We're also working with other federal agencies on expansion and permanent presence on the airport at this time.
Thank you.
Anybody else on the executive? Yes, ma'am.
I'll start from the bottom because I have to read. Is Tony on the phone?
Yes.
Okay. Tony, can you explain on page 30? You always give this great list of your economic development activities and key engagements, and there was something on December 12th that says staff coordinated with local business, Freedom Auto Sales, to facilitate a phase 2 EPA study. Can you explain what that was?
Can you bring up Tony Boone?
Yes.
In the booth?
Councilperson Upper, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So that goes back to the Brownfields grant that Cochise County secured, I want to say $600,000 in 2019. Mike Klein, we've been working with Matt McLaughlin on finding projects to do that. So in the course of what we've done in our business operations side, as a business owner is moving, adjusting their property, selling their property, or starting a new business, we generally go out on site as part of the courtesy inspection. In this case, with Freedom, Mike Klein was out on site and they made a discussion because, again, it was a former gas station that they had already done a phase 1 environmental, and they were looking to do a phase 2, which would require, and that's where the numbers came from, between $20,000 and $50,000. Because we were aware of the Brownfields grant, Mike said, hold tight, let's work an application because we've got federal funding that can do that in lieu of you spending your individual money. So came back, turned a relatively quick application process, got it approved by our contact, and it is sitting with EPA currently to be approved. So in effect, the federal grant will pay for that phase 2 in lieu of the property owner.
That's great.
That is good. Okay, thank you. That's all I had for Tony, and then I'll just gonna go backwards now. So on page 26, I saw that Public Works had two retirements, Darren Stensby and Richard Kayer, and they were with Sierra Vista for let's see. Darren was employed with the city for 30 years. And Richard spent over 35 years in Public Works, and he was with us for 12 years. And I think that's just so great to see in there because, it shows what kind of culture we have here, that people don't stick around in jobs that long anymore. So I think that's really great to see that. And congratulations to them for moving on and getting to retire. But it's created
a hole for us and a challenge in recruiting.
Yeah,
so.
An opportunity for someone else. I'm sad to see Greyhound no longer servicing the area, but I think it's said that they might come back. Maybe someday they'll consider it.
Well, it's COVID travel related.
Yeah, I think also maybe next time because I think they'll set up again. They'll set up operations again. they never offered their tickets online, so people had to like wait and try to get them at the train. You know, it just made it like an extra obstacle for people
When they come back to us, I think they will, we need to say, you need to put your tickets online if you can plan on making money down here, because that just in today's world, it makes no sense not to have online access.
Well, I
Oh, I'm
couldn't
sorry.
agree
They only put online, so the people
they
that
only do
showed
it
up to
online.
transit center
Okay.
and mixed up. But like they didn't give us a way to like
We gotta figure a way to
tickets.
sell tickets
Partner
for
with them.
third partner with them, something.
Yeah, so you know but and then of course I saw the canines.
That's cute.
I was like, this is so great. Yeah, I love dogs. So Izzy's the one that retired. Early
One that's currently
retirement for
retired.
Izzy. Oh, good job, Izzy. And then
Where did Izzy
Yukon
go?
with her handler, I think it said. Her
Yeah,
last handler.
She retired and is gonna spend the rest of her life with her last handler.
Oh.
That makes me really happy.
We got Yukon.
And then now we have Yukon, which sounds like he's ready to go. So
Oh.
I just love their pictures because they're just like really patriotic picture. Okay, but I like that you included that in here. Greg's, I don't say it enough. They do a great job on this report every time, and I'm always excited to read through it because of that.
I wish more people read the executive report. It's
'Cause
such
there's
a
a lot.
good summary of everything that's going on. If you want to know what's going on in the city, this is what you should read.
And thank you for the summaries from the commission meetings. I'm happy that the West End is pleased with how things are going. That makes me feel a lot better about everything that's changed with everything going on. And I think it's really great that the library is using the rec track now. I'm sure removing that extra step, I think Larry's listening, it probably makes it a lot, it encourages people to use the library more and participate more. So I think that's fantastic. And that's it.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else? Okay, that's the council executive report. We're now gonna go on to item D, report on recent trips, meetings, and future meetings. And I'm gonna start this, but I'm gonna probably dip a little bit into item E on the future discussion items as well. I got and reviewed a proposal from Councilman Greg over here, Mr. Johnson, on economic development. And after reviewing that and thinking this through, before we sit down and talk about a potential economic development commission, we really need to bring everybody up to speed on exactly what we're doing and what we can do. So for me, I think before we have that discussion as to whether or not we have a commission, we all need to come to a firm understanding of what we're doing for economic development, what we're not doing in economic development, what's appropriate for us to do in economic development. And that kind of education class, I think, we need to have prior to our strategic planning session. Now, I will tell you from talking with the assistant city manager is we're still having problems with getting the dates lined up. Have we got them lined up?
I was planning to ask for council's opinion under future meetings.
Okay.
I do have some.
Okay,
dates.
well, we'll get to that in a minute, but the bottom line is, I would love to be able to get together at a date before then to go through this education piece is what I'm calling it. So we all know where we are, we start off at the same level, and then maybe we discuss this as part of the strategic planning process as well. Because obviously, economic development has gotta be, we're talking about future plans, it's gotta be a big piece to that. So that's what I'm thinking, so I apologize for not getting back with you, Greg, immediately. But I wanna make sure that everybody has, the basic understanding so we can have meaningful discussions, because economic development is obviously an important part of what communities do. So with that, anybody else have on, reports, recent trips, future meetings or meetings?
Can I ask for a report? This is not I don't know if it counts. It doesn't count.
Asking for a report?
Can you tell, well, no, it probably doesn't count on the agenda.
Okay.
What is the fire Can you tell us about the
Oh,
fire?
the fire is basically controlled burn.
It is a controlled burn?
Yeah.
Everyone's calling and going,
Yeah, I know.
there's a fire, oh my
I
gosh.
talked to the chief yesterday because the last couple of days it
Everyone's
seems like it's
freaking
bigger.
out because it looks big.
Yeah, but
Okay.
evidently there's all kinds of folks watching it, more than
Okay.
usual, so keep your fingers
It
crossed
looks
and
bad.
hopefully the wind doesn't turn the wrong way.
No, it is a controlled burn.
Yeah.
And there are quite a few units out there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I guess that kind of fit under council requests, but future discussion
Okay.
items under council requests?
People call us and they think we know. They think we have answers. I don't know.
Victoria?
Why would I know?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So after quite a bit of back and forth, I was able to get some good suggestions from our strategic planning consultant that I wanted to run past council while you're all here together. We're looking at the same week we originally suggested, but specifically Monday, March 22nd, Tuesday, March 23rd, and Wednesday, March 24th. The times could be either noon to 6 or 1 to 7 p.m. on Monday and Wednesday. If we started at either noon or 1, we could offer lunch beforehand if you wanted to participate, and then we can start strategic planning. On Tuesday, the time would be 12 to 3 to allow for the work session to occur at 3 o'clock that day. So I'm looking to see if that works for council and if you'd prefer to start at noon or start at 1.
Can you
Works
repeat?
for me.
Works for me, noon.
Can you repeat that?
March 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. It's, I'm hearing noon to 6 on Monday and Wednesday, noon to 3 on Tuesday.
I'm looking at the calendar.
I know, I have 3 different calendars. Hold on.
Tuesday would be noon to 3.
Tuesday would be noon to 3. The work session would be at 3 p.m.
Okay.
Noon to 3. Okay. It's fine. I can make it work.
Okay, so we can all make it work, so I guess we're a go.
Okay.
Say it one more time out loud.
And, I appreciate the lunch.
I'm gonna have.
Feed me, Seymour.
Okay.
Okay.
So noon to 6.
Okay,
Monday,
so it'd
Wednesday.
be noon to 6 on March 22nd, noon to 3 p.m. on March 23rd, and noon until 6 p.m. or whenever we finish on Wednesday, the 24th.
I'm good with that. Y'all just made my mind. So.
Okay, I think.
And I'm hoping that federal district court in Tucson trials will continue to be suspended at that time, since I've been called for jury duty that week. But
They didn't call me.
Those usually get,
Yeah.
90% of them are resolved before I go, so.
We'll keep our fingers
I may be
crossed.
the only one with a conflict.
Okay, anything else on the future discussion items or council requests? Okay, we'll go to COVID-19 status. Chuck, you want to give us a little brief on what's going on? We had part of it already, I guess.
Yeah, well, Mr. Mayor, obviously, we share everybody's concerns with the amount of doses available to the county and how they're being distributed. So we, get small allocations for our own fire department to do that. But, one of the issues has been, doctor's offices, certain ones are receiving certain amount of doses. They can prioritize however they see fit, which is interesting. Obviously they try to stay within the guidelines. You have pharmacies, you have us, you have Fry Fire, and it's been pretty difficult for us to really be able to tell the public, hey, this is what's going on, this is what you need to do. So you kind of got a little bit of a free-for-all out there, and best advice is to just register wherever you can if you're within one of the priority groups, and hopefully you'll get a call to do that. So, but it is happening, and hopefully the supply will get worked out, and we'll all working together can, everybody that gets it obviously helps us get through this. That being said, and with staff now in the process of getting vaccinated, probably looking the earliest at April for being able to open our facilities up again. So that's kind of what we're looking at, the way things are going right now.
Yeah, when you say April, are you talking full operation, or are you talking?
Well, I would like to have the buildings, if we have enough people vaccinated, we should be able to get people back to work.
What I'm gonna suggest to you too is, I would think within the next couple of weeks, there should be some lobbies that we're able to open. And I want you to look at that.
Okay.
Okay, because we gotta do it safe, I understand, and I know I'm pushing you. Okay?
Well, nobody wants them open more than I do, Mr.
I know.
Mayor, so, but at any rate, you know, I do see a light at the end of the tunnel here, and I think we'll be able to do that. That being said, we've had a lot of success with our outdoor facilities and the protocols that staff has put into place in Parks and Leisure, and they've been successful in being able to operate a number of tournaments. And you're going to see that more of those coming forward. We have not had any reports of any issues with regards to how they're being run, and certainly have not heard any reports about COVID-related illness coming out of that. So as a result, a lot of people are looking at Sierra Vista and have come to Sierra Vista because they can't go anywhere else, and that's been actually a boon to us. With that being said, we're hoping, you know, with the blessing of the governor, to start looking at summer activities, first with Sips and Skies and the Summit Challenge. And we asked Ms. Wilson to proceed with the planning for that. So hopefully we'll have enough out there that we'll be able to run a successful outdoor event. And if that's a good test run, then we should be able to do something more for 4th of July this year than we did last year. So you know, hopefully things are going good, but the outdoor activities, at least for right now, are looking pretty good in terms of what staff's doing. So, you know, I think things are improving. The case numbers, you know, are drifting downward, and hopefully that will accelerate as more vaccinations take place. So I'm optimistic about it. It's just we've still got a little bit more to go here. So that's where we're at, Mr. Mayor, and we'll continue to work with the county, you know, on distribution of vaccinations and that kind of thing. So that's where we're at.
Questions for Mr. Matucci on his report? Anything else for the council? We got a whole 6 minutes. Okay, thank you very much. We'll see everybody on Thursday. Meeting adjourned.